G'day, thanks for joining the Lunch Money live stream. We are live streaming our way through this crazy pandemic. Listen, did you see Ash Maloney win bronze for Australia in the Olympics? He won it in the Decathlon. It requires him to be good at 10 different events. For those of us that know Greek. What are those events? There's the 100-metre sprint, the long jump, the shot put, the high jump, etc., hurdles, discus throw, pole vaulting, javelin throwing. A lot of different disciplines, a lot of them not necessarily, just because you're good at running doesn't mean you're going to be good at pole vaulting or javelin throwing. I have a wonderful quote from him, which I don't know if it'll ever make one of those inspirational posters you see in boardrooms. Decathlon is not just about running, jumping and throwing. It's keeping yourself together in one piece. It's making sure you're ready for the next event and taking one step at a time. Ash Maloney, bronze medal, absolutely fantastic. You are our champion and hero here on Lunch Money today. Now, I would posit, of course, the owner-manager of a small or medium-sized business also needs to be the master of many disciplines. These all come to manifest themselves in the financial forecast. A financial forecast, a projection of the business, done honestly, reflects all of the different disciplines. It reflects what a business is good at, what it needs to do better, and it helps you understand, get your head around some of the challenges that are coming up. But listen, what would I know? I have here Michael Ford, who is our guest today. G'day, Michael. How are you doing?
Nick, how are you? Really good to be here.
Fantastic. Michael is the CEO at Castaway Forecasting. Michael has been on our show before. Well, we've had 98 different guests, which is fantastic. And that doesn't include the fact, I think this is Michael's third appearance. Listen, you've been caught up in the exuberance of the Olympics to help keep a positive spirit in these troubled times.
I have indeed. How amazing was Ash's effort? One of the things that really stood out for me, there was another Australian there, and he will go down in history, I suspect. His name's Cedric Dubler. And following, the quote you talked about with Ash, the idea that you only really get to keep competing if you can keep on going. So Cedric hurt himself in one of the earlier events, he didn't get through the pole vault. He was still allowed to keep competing, but he was out of the competition. He wasn't going to score. He was the guy who just kept with Ash around the 1500. Ash is not a 1500-meter runner. 4 minutes 39 was the personal best he set. Dubler kept himself in the game no matter what pain he was going through, and he was there coaching and helping and urging Ash on to the finish. It came down to 9 seconds. Ash had to finish 9 seconds, or no more than 9 seconds behind the guys who were in fourth or fifth chasing him. It came down to just, was it 100 points or something similar? Quite amazing. So I completely agree. This idea that you've just, no matter what it takes, you've got to find a way to keep on staying in the game. I think it's hard these days. It's getting harder to keep people sort of in the game, but that's what we as business owners have got to keep on doing.
Now, very amiss of me. I did see that there was the other chap, but I don't want to call him the other chap. What was his name again?
So Cedric Dubler.
Cedric Dubler.
Dubler.
I saw that he sort of acted as a bit of a pacemaker for that 1500 meter. And you know what? We all need a Cedric Dubler, don't we? Particularly at this time. I mean, at all times, but. We need that's fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Sometimes there are times where about 800 meters in, Ash looked like he was really struggling, and at that point, Cedric was running right next to him, so he was pacing him at that point. And then there was other times when he felt, because Cedric was watching where the competition was and knew that we needed to speed up, and so then Cedric went a couple of meters ahead. So he's just balancing that pace and lead exercise. So a great mentor and great coaching skills to do that. And in the end, Ash just flew the last lap, went outside of his body, I'm sure, to deliver a performance beyond what he could ever imagine. He set a personal best in the 1500 meters. And can you imagine anything harder at the end of 9 grueling events in 2 days to have to go and run 4 laps as fast as you possibly can?
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, the fact that, I mean, they call it they call them gladiators, the people that do the the decathlon.
Yeah.
It is incredible. I guess one of the reasons I enjoy speaking with you, particularly in the last 12 months, has been that there is a lot of things that we can all get down in the dumps about. But listening to your story is uplifting in terms of the Castaway business. I mean, you expanded into the UK. You've gone into the cloud over the last 12 or 18 months, or tell us a little bit about that journey.
We're getting there. Look, COVID has been bad for many, many businesses, and it's also been good for some. As a forecasting business, we do budgeting and forecasting, financial modeling software. I think the world kind of woke up to the idea that forecasting has a real value, a real place in dealing with uncertainty. We've been a desktop product for 10 years. We launched in September 2010 and have been quite successful at desktop. We are coming to the end of a project. We've spent a couple of years building a cloud version, so we're not yet in the cloud, but we're coming. That's happening this year, and I think that'll be a game changer for us. It's been a great challenge to kind of build this product as our teams have been coming in, coming out, lockdown, not lockdown. Because it's a complex beast. It's a couple of years, many hours and many people years worth of work and millions of dollars worth of investment. To try and pull this together through all the uncertainty of COVID has been challenging. And we're a forecasting company, but we have the same issues that any company has, of keeping people motivated, keeping people focused. But I'm super excited. I put something on LinkedIn just the other day. We signed up one of the world's top 10 accounting firms. That's number 7. We deal now with 7 of the world's top 10 accounting firms. We're on track to try and get another couple as well. And cloud is going to make a huge difference to that.
That's fantastic. I mean, it always makes me smile when I'm speaking with an accountant and I ask them what they're using, and they talk about Castaway. And I have heard them say it.
It makes me smile too. It's good.
Yeah. I've heard them say I'm doing a Castaway. So it's almost using it as a generic. Tell me, so you recruited in the UK, yeah?
Yeah, we're building a team in the UK. I was over there January. In fact, I was over there Brexit Day, January 29th, I think it was last year. And the intention at that point had been to build out a team. We were on the cusp of hiring some people. So we're still going through that process. We put things on hold. Our idea really was to set up an overseas office. I wanted someone from our Australian team to go over to the UK, spend 6 months perhaps, just being that conduit between our UK business and our Australian business, building culture, building understanding, kind of showing people the ropes, and that wasn't possible. So it's become, it's certainly a challenge to try and build remote teams, and certainly build remote teams in the UK. Our customer base has grown significantly in the UK, and largely through kind of word of mouth and luckily through reputation, which is fantastic. But I can't wait to get back on a plane and get across there as soon as we can.
Yeah.
We were meant to do a trade show there May 2020, got cut down.
Your big signing, the top 10 accounting firm, they're international?
They're international, yeah, they're international.
That gives you international exposure?
It's fantastic. Yeah, we've got. I love this thing. We've built this little bit of software here in this office in Sydney, and we've got people in Namibia using it. We've got someone in Montenegro modeling a hotel construction with it. There's an insurance company in Zambia or in Zimbabwe using Castaway. It's amazing to think of the impact. And that's really why we started this thing, try and improve the state of small business around the world.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Hey, okay, so look, getting back to our theme of decathlons, I wonder if I was trying to think, what are the 10 disciplines that a business owner needs? And I remembered my Porter's value chain, and I thought, well, that's a good place to sort of have a bit of an anchor, and and it breaks down all the parts of a business that create value, and it's a way of analysing a business. Inbound logistics, operations, you've got to be good at what it is you actually do. Outbound logistics in terms of distribution, particularly if you're a product. Marketing and sales, of course. I mean, the business owner needs to be the number one salesperson, as well as understanding their markets and who they're selling to, and not to mention procurement, IT, their head of HR, etc. So and my thought was really that these things, they do manifest themselves in a cash flow forecast, don't they? I mean, you when you start at the very top, presumably, you've got revenue. Well, what's your marketing strategy? Who you're selling to? How are you going to get? You look at your 4 Ps. What's your price? What's your distribution?
Yep. That's a P and a D, but I'll take that as 4 Ps. The Porter's model there, I think, is a perfect way of describing a business. It fits us as a software company. It fits consulting businesses. It fits manufacturing and physical goods based businesses as well. It's a good way to look at it. Because for me, a forecast is only really a story of the business. You don't sit down at the spreadsheet and start chopping numbers in. I think you've always got to start by knowing what the business is intending to do. And so a forecast really is just the plan for the business written in numbers, ideally. So it should take into account all of those 10 aspects that Porter talks about. Some of the best business modeling I've ever done. I think, Castaway is a budgeting tool, a cash flow tool, a forecasting tool, but I think at its peak, it's used as a business modeling tool. And I think it's an advancement beyond just forecasting. I think there's a lot we can talk about forecasting, but for me, forecasting is really about getting a sense of the model of the business. You want to set something up so you can do what ifs and scenarios continually, to try and sort of answer some of those uncertainties in the future. One thing I picked up when I saw that Porter's model, I've long thought that accountants report upside down. We start with the P&L, we go to the balance sheet next. We start at sales, we go to cost of sales, we go to overheads, profit, and then we go to the balance sheet, so cash and assets and liabilities and equity. That's how an accountant sees the world. I am an accountant, or a reformed accountant, so I kind of get that. The entrepreneur, I'm also an entrepreneur, sees it entirely differently. We start with equity. We say, how much money have we put in? How much additional funding have we raised to sort of build up our capacity to invest? What assets have we then acquired with that funding? And then what working capital gets tied up? Then when it comes to the P&L, we start with overheads, because I reckon overheads have often been denigrated, long been denigrated as being they're the things you've got to try and cut. Overheads give you the capacity to run a certain scale of business. They are the most important thing. They're the foundation for running any business. And then you've got production, whatever it is you're producing, whether it's a service or a good or whatever. Then you've got production. And then finally, you get to do marketing and then sales. And that's I think, the way that Porter has laid that out at the top. It talks about firm infrastructure, then human interaction and technology and the like. You've got to have all those pieces in place first before you can even think about making or selling anything. For us, the best forecasting exercises are those that talk through the flow of the business. Lots of examples we can talk about. I did a lot of work with mining companies the last sort of 5 to 10 years ago. And I walked into one organization and they had forecasts all over the place. They used to reforecast regularly, had KPIs. One organization had 4 pages of KPIs, 4 A4 pages full of KPIs. They measured everything and understood very little, to paraphrase Oscar Wilde. And that's what they brought us in for, to try and help unpick, why is it that we measure so much stuff, but people didn't understand enough of what was going on. Back then we were teaching people commercial acumen.
Well, I'll just interject there. Of course, understanding enough of what's going on is enhanced if you subscribe to Lunch Money. So don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're on. And of course, another way of broadening your understanding, as I reach over here, is by asking us a question. You can ask Michael or myself a question live right now, and we'll send you this wonderful mug. So Michael, I thought that I actually have a real life case. I posted it as a question on LinkedIn today, and you probably, when you saw that, you probably thought, "Oh, that's bloody corny." You're sending me a Dorothy Dixer or an underarm there. But no, it's actually, I had a client, an old client, and he called me and he said, "Listen, he's in a new business." He says, "Look, I've lodged a patent for this invention. And it's in mining services, but I won't say any more about that." And he said, "Look, I reckon I need, X dollars." I said, "Look, that's great. Send me through what you've got." And I'm expecting to get some financial forecasts and some background. He sends me through the patent application. So
start.
That's a start. Now, my advice to him to begin with, the first thing I'm thinking is I really need to get him in front of someone else, because this isn't my role to package that up. And in fact, a Castaway user in Perth is someone who I've got in mind, who we both know. But the question I've got is, my suggestion to him is, number one, get a forecast done, and also do some market research, obviously. I mean, how much are people prepared to pay? Because one of the things about the forecast, of course, now I think that we're in equity territory, not debt territory, by the way. Now, if I'm going to be an equity investor, how much money am I going to put in? How much is enough? Because after I've written the first check, I don't want to have to suddenly, get desperate calls for more money. And what's in it for me? What am I going to make? So using that, what would your advice be? Do you think I'm on the right track? And how can a cash flow forecast help the business owner get their head around all of those important questions?
Yeah, I think you're entirely on the right track. In fact, what we're talking about here is the steeplechase. So we're not really, it's not a decathlon event, but it's one of the events at the Olympics. You run around the track and you get hurdles in the way. The first hurdle here is that I fully believe a cash flow forecast is necessary, if for no other reason than to put the ideas that this guy's got on paper, to commit numbers to it, to show that he's thought through the process of what it will take to take this patent, turn it into a product, commercialize it, launch it, grow it, protect against competition, manufacture it at scale, all the rest. There's a ton of things that have to happen, clearly, between having a piece of paper called a patent and having a successful business based on that technology. Massive amounts of effort. But the first thing, often someone like that would say is, yeah, but how do I forecast? I've no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to price this thing at. I don't know how it's going to be made. I don't know what it's going to cost. And so they put up the first hurdle of, I just don't know. And, in a broader sense, this idea of forecasting and uncertainty is sometimes people seem to think it's not possible. I think forecasting is entirely possible in uncertainty, but you've got to do it the right way. And this is where we get to, the forecast is not all about slapping some numbers on a piece of paper. The forecast is a disciplined process, and the numbers are just the outcome of the process. So I would be saying to this guy that the next hurdle you get. So I'm saying first, yes, do a forecast. Next hurdle is, well, what do I put on? What do I assume is going to happen in the business? And here, I think you get to the real heart of forecasting, which is being able to be prepared for anything. It's not about predicting; it's about being prepared for multiple different scenarios. So scenario modeling, I think, is an important part of forecasting. Because if you think about it, a forecast that he might present to you is one set of numbers that represent one response to one set of assumed circumstances. And therefore, that thing that he presents to you ignores every other possible circumstance. And therefore, it's easier for any financier, whether they're an investor or like an equity or debt financier, to poke holes in that set of assumptions, because one forecast is only one story. So I'd be then saying, let's sit down and do this as a disciplined process of scenario modeling. Number one, we start with, what are the possible scenarios you can see? And you'll cut it down to 3 or 5 different possibilities. He's got a few phases in his business. One is, so he's got the idea. Then he's got to get the prototype product, assuming it's a product here. Then he's got to work on fine-tuning that, getting some market feedback. So there's that first bit of proving the product. Okay, so you can make some assumptions about that, the amount of time and amount of money it might cost to prove the product up. Then there's the actual launch and commercialization, and that means he's got to go put a business together. All those 10 things that Porter talked about. One of them was technology, and operations to create the product. The other 9 are also equally important when it comes to building a business. So he's got to look at what that takes.
Even then, I mean, just at a very high level, am I going to manufacture this product myself? What's that going to cost? What level of investment is that going to require in plants and physical assets? Or am I going to have someone manufacture it in China, offshore, wherever it might be, which is a different cost. It's a different cost curve, I suppose, in terms of maybe it's going to cost more to do that in the long run, but it saves me short run investment. Then, of course, who's going to sell it? Am I going to go through channel? I'm going to find channel partners, or am I going to sell this stuff direct? And then you might say, well, hang on a minute, have you got any experience selling? What's your contact base like? How's that all going to work? So certainly there are different scenarios.
If you step it through, what you've got to identify first are the apex questions. There's a series of apex questions. So one of them is, how does he get it manufactured? And there's really three ways. One is he manufactures it himself. Another one is he outsources it to someone else. Another third one might be he licenses it to somebody. There's only a small number of possibilities, and so you might as well model each of them. The next apex question is, how does he get it? How does he bring the thing to market? And there'll be a number of different possibilities for that. And so the process isn't that daunting. It's just identifying what are the critical apex questions. The apex questions are those where the answer to that question has a whole series of knock-on effects. And so you kind of end up tracing this logic tree, starting from the idea of how you manufacture the business all the way through to how to get it to market. And then at this stage, I'm still nowhere near the keyboard. Okay, I'm not near Excel. I'm not near Castaway. I'm not near any tool. I'm writing the story, because you've got to tell the story like it makes sense. Okay, so scenario number one is I'm going to manufacture this stuff myself. I'm going to employ my own onshore sales team. I'm going to go out and hire some industry experts and whatever, the high cost method. And then you could also build a low cost, agile method approach as well. The point of it is the forecast is just the outcome of this amazing business planning process. And that's always what we'd recommend. It's not just about slapping numbers on a page at all.
I guess in any of those scenarios, it's what problem am I solving for who, and how am I going to make money out of it?
Yeah. Done well, it teaches, you learn a lot about the business as you go. Okay, you get to, it is that point of introspection in the business. If you do the forecasting process, the way we would suggest, which is a deep introspection and deep review of all of the key questions. Because the beautiful thing is, then you've got the set of numbers you've got are actually they're just they're just one reflection of a whole series of assumptions, and forecasts have to be assumptions based, because it's the assumptions you're watching for. Whether those assumptions are coming true or whether they're not coming true, they become the early warning sign that something may be wrong. And if you build the forecast the right way around critical assumptions, you're actually building an entire, or you're starting this performance management cycle, which is what sits at the heart of all great businesses.
And you mentioned a decision tree. Is that what you said? Decision tree, or
the
terminology you used? And is that something that's built into your package?
It's not. Okay. Our package outputs numbers and we input numbers. Yeah. We're particularly good at doing the hard maths around building a P&L balance sheet and cash flow statement and a bunch of other reports that all balance every time. Yeah. So we take the time out of the number crunching, which then frees people up to put the real time into the thinking and the analysis. Yeah. We advocate for best practice around forecasting, certainly around decision trees and multi-scenarios and modeling, do nothing different forecasts and then do something different. So, disciplined ways of deciding scenarios.
Well, I was going to say, this ex-client of mine is going to expect me to pull a rabbit out of the hat, but what I'm going to do is actually tell him to watch this replay, and then I'm going to direct him to our friend that in Perth who will do all of that, who will drive the model. Hey, the other thing, I've got another scenario where I'm insisting on a forecast, and it's one where we're bailing a client out. They're in so-called bad bank with one of the major banks. The bank has extended them a lot of money. A whole lot of stuff's gone wrong. They bought some additional businesses that didn't work out. They've got rid of those business units. They're now getting back to where they were, but meanwhile they've still got all the debt. The bank has agreed to take a haircut, which is good for everybody. But I still want to know that regardless of the haircut, and with the new businesses modeled the way they are, that the thing is going to be viable. It's going to be able to service its debt obligations. So that's a different scenario where we're using these forecasts. What do you sort of think about it under that scenario? Slightly different scenario.
Again, highly applicable. What you need to know, what you want, more importantly, what you want the business to know is that there is a viable path through to the end or to a successful outcome. Rule number one there, I'd say your forecast has to be three-way. You've got to have P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow all together. If for no other reason than the balance sheet, inclusion of the balance sheet gives you a sanity check. So often we see very hopeful P&Ls. hockey stick forecasts in the P&L looking great. But when you look at the working capital implications on the balance sheet or the capital investment implications, it's not really realistic. So the balance sheet is good as a sanity check. And, so
listen, I'm going to stop you right there just for 1 second, right? Because we're going to do something. I'm going to set you up here, right? I'm going to set you up because I'm going to use this. I want to create a clip, right? Yep. Because sometimes I say to accountants, I need a three-way. And they go, what's a three-way? Okay, so here comes the clip, okay? Tell me, Michael, what is a three-way forecast?
Three-way forecast is simply a forecast that includes a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement, all integrated. Pretty simple. It is designed so that you use the balance sheet as a sanity check, because we've all seen those hockey stick P&L type forecasts, the very optimistic forecasts of growth and profit and increasing margin and the like. What we know as accountants and what business operators know is that as you grow, that has impacts in the balance sheet. Debtors, inventory, creditor, impacts tax and GST, as well as capital requirements. You can't just forecast the P&L. It's only one small part of the business. And so for me, three-way is the only way to forecast. Years ago, I came across this idea, and I don't recall where it came from, but it kind of really resonated, that a business is a balance sheet moving through time. If you can imagine the balance sheet, on the left-hand side, there's assets and liabilities equity. Right-hand side, assets, liability, equity. There's the before and the after picture. The cash flow statement is the thing that links the cash balance, the opening cash balance, to the closing cash balance. And the P&L is the thing that links the opening retained earnings to closing retained earnings. It's kind of it's a financial bridge. You've got to have all three, because you can't describe the business with just one of those statements.
Okay, now when we say to accountants, we need a three-way, they're going in the back of their mind, well, I've got QuickBooks or Xero or MYOB. Tell us about how Castaway sort of solves that problem in taking the balance sheet on its journey into the future.
Yeah, certainly. So MYOB and Xero and QuickBooks and all the rest are fantastic at looking backwards, telling the truth of what's happened in the past. Castaway is designed to start where they finish and look forwards. So we built Castaway because I got frustrated building models in Excel. You can do everything that Castaway does in Excel, perhaps, but it takes you a ton of time. So just think about it. We might start with an opening debtors figure, $100,000. You might suggest that you've got sales of $10,000 a month plus GST. So and you get paid on 30-day terms, because you put those inputs into Castaway, and we then do the calculations. We know you've got $10K a month in revenue, $11,000 a month in invoicing, and after the first month, because you haven't been paid, you'll have $11,000 worth of debtors or extra debtors. So what we set out to do in Castaway is have a user enter things that are kind of operationally intelligent, revenue values, units and rate, GST rates, payment timings, customer payment timings, that sort of thing. And then we do all the maths in the background to fill out the balance sheet calculations, make sure everything balances. Three-way really is just another way of saying double entry bookkeeping, which is another way of saying the numbers work every time, which is really what's important.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. That's a wrap on that little segment. Our producer's going to make a clip of that, and it's going to go on YouTube. And every time I ask someone for a three-way forecast, I'm going to send them the URL to that. So now that you've helped us out with that, and we're going to be, I'm now going to sort of step us on the journey. So we talked about the startup situation, and I also mentioned this turnaround situation. And often I say to people, listen, I for any sort of lending scenario, I need to see a three-way. And so they want to do a quick and dirty. And, one of the things that you say is a fast forecast is rarely a good forecast. Talk us through why you say that. It's
really easy to put numbers on a page. Okay, it's really simple to put numbers on a page. Maybe take last year's numbers and increase them by 3% or 5% or something. But I think you do yourself a real disservice. Do the business a disservice, and do advisors and lenders and financiers and other stakeholders a disservice. Because, last year plus 3% is fun with maths. It's not a forecast. A forecast, for a forecast to work, it has to be connected to your operations assumptions and connected to what you're intending to do in the business. Fundamentally, it's got to be connected with the story. So yeah, I can give you a fast forecast. In fact, there's tools out there that promote themselves on the speed that they can help you get a forecast. except all they're doing is putting numbers on a page, which, you might as well have a random number generator.
I love what you I love what you just said. Then that's fun with maths. So it's not really, you're just having a good time, but you're not really achieving an outcome. I mean, you also talk about simplistic versus simplified forecasting.
Yeah, I think, and there's a key difference. I think simplistic means you're ripping the guts out of something so it loses its essence. And fast forecasting is simplistic. It kind of misses the point, in my view. Simplified forecasting, I think, is much more powerful, where you've built a business model. It doesn't have to be fully featured. You don't need all the numbers, all the lines. You can still focus on big ticket items if you want to. You don't have to have the detail. But as long as it's simplified, means it's sort of boiled down to its essence. It's like almost the Plato, the idea of Plato. I mean, everything has an essence. So a simplified forecast is like a dot, like a paint by numbers version of the Mona Lisa. If you think the real story of the business is the Mona Lisa, the simplified forecast, the good one, is the paint by numbers version. It's still recognizable. It gives you the outline, the major colors. You get a sense of it. Yeah. Because the power of the forecast is kind of is measured by the quality of the conversations and the decisions and the actions it triggers, not by how pretty the numbers are.
Well, it's a functional roadmap, isn't it? It doesn't have to describe
Entirely.
Every single bush, but it needs to show you how you're going to get through there. Hey, the other thing, I guess we were talking about, we can't ignore the fact that we're living through COVID. I don't really like talking about it because I find there's too much of it around the place, elsewhere. But nonetheless, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I know you touched on it before, but we were talking about forecasting in uncertainty. I mean, we're all having a good time a couple of months ago, and then here we are now. The whole eastern seaboard's locked down. So just want to sort of dwell on that. Just talk a little bit more about forecasting in uncertainty in the context of where we are today.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I mentioned it before, and I keep on saying it. Forecasting is not about predicting a certain future. It's about preparing us for many versions of an uncertain future. It's about, as you said, it's the art of designing business roadmaps. And so the forecasting process at every stage ought to be the idea of logical incrementalism. Where are we today? What are the possible paths from here, and what do we choose to do in case either or any of those paths come to fruition? It's like if you're a coach of a football team, you want to be standing on the sidelines with a playbook. You want to know what plays to call, instead of standing there with no idea what you'll intend to do. So uncertain. Everything is uncertain. CEO's job, the business owner's job, is to make decisions in the face of uncertainty. But let's say if those decisions aren't informed by some type of insight, analysis, thinking, or just experience, they're actually guesses. They're not real decisions. We dress them up and call them decisions, but they're just guesses. I'd much rather help business owners swing the odds in their favour by giving them information that helps them make better calls.
Now, we've got a comment here from Brad Solly, who is an accountant in Perth, who I know quite well. I don't know if you're a Castaway user, Brad, but just for our listeners, Brad Solly says rubbish in, rubbish out is a big problem. Entirely. My experience is that most SME clients' managed accounting files, Xero, QuickBooks, etc., are not accurate. Before forecasting forward, need to make sure starting position is correct, especially if historic performance is used as an indicator for future performance. I'd say that you would concur solidly with that. Listen,
Brad makes a really good point. The key part is to get an opening balance sheet that's right. And even if cash, debtors, inventory, fixed assets is creditors is maybe enough, and GST and tax liabilities. I don't really love the idea of forecasting from history. The last couple of years have shown us that history is a very bad guide of the future. We do tend to encourage people to do sort of zero-based, ground-up forecasting because we keep getting to rethink the assumptions. And that's the great bit of forecasting. You get people to keep thinking about the future. Instead of worrying about this week and the end of next week and whether they can pay the bills next Friday, you start extending their focal length. They think more about risk and opportunity because they can take a longer term view. That's the Trojan horse that forecasting creates. It just builds this culture of thinking forward. And that ends up being a much more strategic business.
One of Stephen Covey's 7 habits is beginning with the end in mind. So it certainly helps in that regard. Listen, believe it or not, we are 34 minutes in, and I don't like to go for more than 40 minutes. So just a shout out to those of you who like to ask questions after we've closed the podcast, the live stream, and get your questions in now, because this is your warning. We are going to shut down in a few minutes. So please, if you've got a question, throw it into us now. Listen, we wanted to talk a little bit about mental health. God knows I'm going insane. You can tell that by looking at my crazy hairstyle at the moment. But tell us a little bit about what your thoughts on mental health and what you're doing to stay sane.
I think it's always been an issue. Thankfully, the world is talking more about mental health. Our experience, Castaway in part helps people with cash flow forecasts. We talk to people all the time who are suffering on the edge of not having enough cash flow. I've often observed the corrosive nature, the almost cancerous nature, that doubt, ongoing concern about cash flow, not really knowing where things are going, creates on people. It grinds you. It's hard to keep up. And then when things like COVID come along, it's sort of external shock, it can really push people off kilter. I think it's super, super important to be able to firstly acknowledge it. It's hard running your own business because it's hard to get to find people to talk to. And often it's difficult just to figure out how the heck to get through. We see it, and we support the idea of maintaining mental health. Ritual is important. Some of our habits and rituals have been threatened or messed up with COVID. Exercise is important. I think it's something that's, for me, I've found useful. Last year, I'll admit quite openly, I used to do a lot of cycling, and last year I didn't do a whole lot. I did 2,500 Ks at the start of the year, then got fat, put on about 8 kilos, and was I wasn't in a great state. Mentally was down and flat, and everything kind of felt like it was all building up. A ton of things happened around the business, around family, and it just was a bad state. And it's hard to get through. You've got to pull yourself out. So this year, and I've done a lot more cycling. I ride with a group called Tour to Cure, and we ride to raise money for cancer research. Over 11 years, it raised $65 million, funded 400 projects, and made a whole bunch of, or been responsible for a whole bunch of scientific
just while you're
breakthroughs.
telling us about that, we've got your website there. Just
fantastic.
Flash up.
There we go. Look at that. Look at that. That was me in Tasmania a couple of years ago. I've got the radio there. I'm one of the ride leaders, and I love being able to sort of put energy back into something like this, which is so worthwhile. Through lockdown, through COVID, through pandemic, all charities, I think, have seen been really challenged to keep fundraising. And the problem is the causes they support don't stop. Cancer research doesn't stop, or it shouldn't stop. If it does, then you've got to go back and start again. I know you were doing some work. You did a big run with the Smith family, raising some money, and it's hard for all these organisations to keep going through COVID. And I don't know, is it the old thing that when you focus on stuff outside yourself, it's much more satisfying, and it also helps you to kind of get some stability and quiet in the brain? I think that's definitely true, as is the simple fact of being fitter. Like a fit body creates a fit mind, and I get it.
Totally. I think you've got to oxygenate the brain. You've got to oxygenate the brain, and you know what? I start most mornings with a little workout, and it means that no matter what happens through the day, you've achieved something. You've accomplished some goal. You start the day with a goal, and I'm sure it's the same with you when you jump on your bike. Presumably, you've got a set number of kilometres or a route in mind, and when you get off that bike, then you've done it, and that's fantastic. Listen, any sort of closing thoughts?
I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and thank you very much for it. I urge the idea that although forecasting might sound complicated, and we often see it not done well. When done well, it can be the linchpin for business success, for confidence, for clarity, for having people have roadmaps in place so they know how to walk into an uncertain future with confidence. I think that's critical for business performance and human performance. It all, to me, makes a whole lot of sense, and it doesn't have to be as hard as people think. But I reckon we've got to get away from this idea that the forecast is just about maths. It's just about the Excel spreadsheet. It's just about the outcomes. That's not about that at all. Like, get away from the keyboard. Think about your business. Give your business the gift of your attention. That's really what forecasting does.
Hey, listen, what was the name of that other guy again? The guy that ran
Cedric Dubler.
Cedric Dubler. I'm going to write that on my whiteboard here, and I'm not going to forget
Dubler. Fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant. All right. Well, look, on that note, Michael, I'm going to say thank you very much to Michael Ford. I mean, it's just incredible how quickly the time's gone, certainly for me. And we did get through most of our talking points, which is fantastic. So thank you so much, Michael, for generously sharing your time and your thoughts. We will post some links to yourself and also to your charity. So help Michael with his fundraising aims there would be wonderful as well. Thank you very much to everybody who has tuned in today. Thank you to everybody who tunes in later to our podcast. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and do all those good things. Hit the notification button, etc., etc., etc. Keep fit, stay well, stay positive if you're on the eastern seaboard, and good luck to you if you're watching from Perth. Cheers. We'll do it all again next week.